Hi, welcome to Be the First Step webinar. We're so glad that you're here with us, and we're going to get started at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and we're going to get started right on time. We hope that we have some viewers come in because we're really looking forward to sharing our message with you tonight. I'm Dr. Laura Hanson.
And I'm Donna Anello, and it's very nice that you're here to join us. We are looking forward to sharing this information with you.
We are the founders of Be the First Step, and we're going to briefly give you some background to Be the First Step and why Donna and I came together in order to put this together. I've been working with children with developmental delay for nearly 20 years, and I have found very specific things in patient histories and backgrounds that really began to take me down a path that made me realize why children were not developing as expected. So this went into a full-blown program where we look at all of the mechanical pieces. We also look at functional labs. And what we do is we try to identify where are the physiological problems. And then we also address the emotional component. Now, I am not a counselor. However, I do a lot in the brain. And one of the tools that I use is a stress response test and a brain mapping. And from there, I can identify the area of the brain that really needs to have attention put to it. And because human physiology works together mechanically, chemically, and thought, or your brain, they all work together all at the same time, you really have to address that all at the same time. Then I met this wonderful woman, Donna Anello, and she has a great background, and I'll let her tell you hers. But from that, we started collaborating.
Mm-hmm. And we found that a lot of the things that were passions of ours, that things we saw with children, were common. We shared them, but I looked at them from the perspective of an educator. You looked at them from the perspective of a healthcare provider.
Yes.
And we realized that if we join together, we're stronger together to help the children that need our help. So I am a teacher. I've been a teacher for about 10 years. I worked in a private preschool. There were 240 children in the school that I worked, and their ages were from about 12 to 18 months all the way up through kindergarten, so turning 6 years old. And I did developmental assessments, the milestone assessments in the 4 domains that are so important to know if your child is missing or lagging in those areas. I did developmental assessments in those 4 areas for all the children in the school. And that was one of the things that was so exciting to me when we got together is your appreciation of the importance of identifying early when a child has missed a milestone and then starting intervention as quickly as possible.
Absolutely.
To keep the gap that is very small when they're very young from growing in time and becoming bigger as the typically developing peers. Their trajectory increases because they learn new skills, they scaffold new things, they become more competent, whereas the child who's missed a milestone gets stuck in that place and can't progress past that.
Right. So together we started really having lots of conversations regarding what's going on in our culture. So I won't limit it just to the school systems, but also just in our culture. First of all, we have Babies Can't Wait, which is a great slogan. However, in our healthcare system, it's always a wait and see mentality before anybody starts addressing very particular problems that are going on with development. And as Donna said, when they're small, the gap is small, but as they get older, that gap gets bigger and bigger, and it gets harder to correct. So together we decided to represent a relationship between the healthcare system and education, because that's what children do. Children go to school. So tonight we are really focused on sharing with parents, with educators, as well as other doctors, therapists, etc., that there is a need to build a relationship. And Donna and I have already done that. We've already put our efforts together, and we are able to share what the parents need for their child. We can handle it from the educational umbrella, and I can handle it from the healthcare umbrella. And together we make a stronger program, where in our traditional healthcare system, we always have the gastroenterologist is looking at your gut, the cardiologist is looking at your heart, the neurologist is looking at your brain and nerves, and nobody is talking to one another. Well, we talk to each other all the time, and we talk to you, the parent, the teacher, other providers, all the time, because it's a collaborative effort. So we see a broken system, and we have decided personally and professionally that we are going to do everything we can to build a bridge in that gap so that we can get children assessed earlier, help parents realize you have so many options. You are not limited to medications, even though I'm not here to tell you not to do that, but I am here to tell you that in almost every instance of every child on some kind of psychotropic drug, those drugs have not been properly evaluated for that age of a patient. And when you use psychotropic drugs at a very early age, you're changing the trajectory of how that nerve is going to function. We know now people that are on psychotropic drugs as adults, they're actually turning off one side of the synapse, which is literally affecting their ability as they get older. And the first thing that they're noticing is they have poor memory. Well, if you're a child and you're still developing all of those communication neurons, and you are blocking synaptic communication, then it's never getting turned on. And if we lose that file, if we never make that file, it is very difficult when you're older to try to create a file. So the important thing is on that early assessment, right? So we want to share some stats with you that you can see regarding this particular area and help you. Okay, I'm going to try that one more time. It's not giving me that option. So what we're going to do is we will simply just tell you some information. Donna, why don't you reflect on why is our system broken? What do you have?
Yeah, the enormity of the problem can be reflected through research that is conducted by the CDC and other organizations that show us the scope of how big this problem is. And if you work in a school, you have some sense of that. If you're an educator, we have educators that are viewing right now that are from different parts of the state, and the system is different in every part of the state, the resources that are available to them, but what's not different is the children.
That's right.
The children are in every place, in every school. There are the children that have a developmental delay that need help. And so this data has been collected, and let me just share some of it with you so you can understand the enormity of this situation.
And this is just on autism, okay? So there's many labels. There's autism, ADD, ADHD, PDD, OCD, ODD. The list is endless. And you certainly in a short webinar cannot go all the way through every single diagnosis. So what I want you to understand, we're going to give you some stats on autism, but we want you to understand that they're available everywhere on all labels.
So about 1% of the world population has an autism spectrum disorder. The prevalence in the United States is estimated at 1 in 68 births. More than 3.5 million Americans live with an autism spectrum disorder. The cost in the US of autism over the lifespan of an individual is about $2.4 million per person with an intellectual disability. That number is $1.4 million for a person without an intellectual disability. 35% of young adults, that's ages 19 through 23, with autism have not had a job or received postgraduate education after leaving high school. And it costs more than $8,600 extra per year to educate a student with autism. And the average cost of educating a student in our area is about $12,000. So you can see there's the resources of time, the resources of finances are stretched to the limit.
Yes.
If you're trying to help a child with a developmental delay or autism reach the fullness of their potential.
Sure.
And what happens is these children, these parents, the parents of these children, it is a daily struggle
Yes,
for them.
it is.
It is a daily struggle.
Yes, it is.
And often they have other children.
Mhm.
So the influence, the scope is huge in this area.
Right, it is. And I see this every day in practice because many of the families are struggling financially. And the chronicity, I think that's another area, is how long that they have been battling, working on their child. And most people think that their child is going to grow out of it. And by the time they're 10 or 11, they're realizing that their child is not going to grow out of it. And the problem is there. And the parents have now become extremely fatigued emotionally. And so this is having a huge impact on family life. So the picture is big. We are now seeing somewhere between 1 and 68 kids are going to be labeled autistic. Now that's the only diagnosis. It's actually 1 in 5 are going to have some type of learning issue, some type of skewed learning skill. What you heard is these children aren't able to become a contributing part back to society after high school. So this means that they will continue to get older. They will have increased demands on our culture, and that is not to suggest a bad thing, but it's time for our world to wake up and go, there's a problem and we're not addressing it. We are going to lose a generation of people, and there will eventually not be anyone to even run our culture going farther or further. So the time is now to start looking at this. We really encourage you, if you are dealing with a child with developmental delay, Donna and I would love to work with you and show you the options that you actually have available to you. If you're an educator,
So let's talk about how this plays out. What does a teacher see in the classroom?
Yes, absolutely.
So you have maybe a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old, and maybe it's a little rocky start to the beginning of school. Then after school gets rolling, the other children kind of settle in, but this particular child doesn't quite settle in. Something is just not right. And the teacher notices, but is not entirely sure what that's about or what to do. So time goes by, the other children make progress and they do different things. They learn new skills. You can see them cohesively moving forward, but you see this one child is not, or maybe 2, is not doing it. The CDC says 15% of children between ages 3 and 17 have a learning disability. So in a class of 15, you have at least one child. So what happens next is that child becomes frustrated because they're not able to do the things maybe that the other kids do. They are having difficult social interactions. So what happens? They become isolated. It's a natural thing that happens because they can't keep up. Either they can't think as quickly, or they're too rough, or they break something in the classroom, because whatever is manifesting outside is difficult for them to communicate, so it's manifesting. It's inside. It's the root of it is inside,
and it's
so
manifesting
it's manifesting outside.
Yes, absolutely.
In these inappropriate behaviors, which often are viewed as a discipline problem.
Exactly, behavior. Something is that child's not behaving correctly.
That's right. And in the world of little children, their personal space and things, facial cues, those things, that's when they learn those things.
That's right.
So the constant negative reinforcement that child receives by invading someone else's personal space, by not picking up on social cues, having their emotions out of sync with the situation. Like they may laugh when something's not funny, or they may think something that's hurtful to another child is funny.
Right.
Though the children start to identify that as something different. So now the teacher maybe talks to mom and dad. Mom and dad they know something may not be right, but they don't know anything. They don't know anything beyond that. So let's continue, fast forward. Ultimately, this child is in kindergarten. What happens then? They haven't learned the skills they need, either academically nor socially. At this point, the parents realize the child needs to go on, to a higher level of paying attention and academics.
Mm-hmm.
They don't think their child's going to be able to handle it. Maybe they seek out help at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So all those years of time,
the foundation.
when the gap was tiny, now the gap is large,
right.
and it's more difficult to address.
It is, and there's lots of evidence of that because of the way the brain grows. So what we're doing is we are being a role model of bridging the relationship. And from a healthcare perspective, I look at things like epigenetics, the parental history, what were those red flags during pregnancy, not even just pregnancy, but prior to pregnancy. And then also going through an early assessment, as Donna was talking about, and looking at the neurology. I look at what is your neurological age versus your chronological age, and then addressing what are the mechanical problems, what is the chemical problems, and then the emotional or brain. And then there is a personalized program created for that child. But that child has to go to school. So
that's right. So
Donna steps in.
So I go into the child's classroom,
Mhm.
and I observe the child, their interactions with the teacher, their interactions with the other children, their ability to do self-care, like
Mhm.
washing hands and toileting. Are they able to eat? Can they open containers? How do they play with the toys and the manipulatives that are available? Do they do one activity, or do they go to all the different activities in the room? What is their pencil grip like? What is their strength like when they play out on the playground?
Mhm.
Are they balanced in the way they move? What about answering questions? When the teacher reads a story and then asks the children to retell it, can this child participate in those type of cognitive activities?
Absolutely.
Do they recognize their own name? Can they count? Do they recognize colors? Can they build with blocks? All of those things, I go into the classroom and I look. After that, I'll often work with them during the course of play, doing developmental milestone testing, asking them to build things, color
Sure,
things, match
sure.
things. So they think we're playing, but really I'm finding out valuable information
Absolutely.
about their development. Then what happens next? Then they need early intervention.
Mhm.
Well, that can come in two forms. It can come private, as we're talking about, where the parent chooses who and when and how much, or they can go down the public school route, which is a system that the children, after a period of time, they may get accepted into the system and receive intervention through the public school system. In addition to that, I work with teachers and do
Yes,
training,
yes.
because they will often notice something is not quite right, but they really don't know what they're looking at or what to look for.
I think our poor teachers have just been completely overburdened with the magnitude of how many children are not developed like they're supposed to, and these teachers have not been trained.
Mhm.
So that is another avenue that we want to come in and help the teachers understand what's going on, but also give them strategies of things that they can do in the classroom that kind of gets everybody on board.
Absolutely, they need that ongoing support, and
Yes.
and their intention is so good and so genuine, and they, with just a little support and a little help, they can make a huge difference for their entire classroom,
Right.
their own personal ability, to manage the classroom, which is more calming and more peaceful, and help the specific child that needs help as soon as possible. They're really on the front lines.
They
So we're
are
trying
on the
to
front
give them the
lines,
tools
sure.
that they need.
Absolutely.
And then talking to parents,
Yeah.
having that real conversation with parents, expressing to them that they can be part of the solution too.
Sure.
They can take action and be part of the solution
Well,
too.
you
And
gotta-
it's
you
not
gotta-
a bleak outcome. It can be a hopeful
Yeah.
outcome.
And you do. You have to extend
Mhm.
this. You can't just rely even on services or private care. You must extend this into the home so that the parents can be successful. So this is where we are trying to be the first step and bridge that relationship between parents and educators and healthcare. So you may have a child, you may know of a child with, let's say, sleeping issues, or they're picky eaters, or they've been chronically ill. Those are actually red flags that I look at that are very much related to interfering with development.
And some of the things I look at would be sensory processing issues for children, would be those inappropriate social behaviors that appear to be a discipline problem, or if a child is academically behind their peers. They're not able to cognitively achieve that level of success that children their age ought to be and are in their classroom.
Sure. So we don't want to mask the symptoms. We don't want to just offer something to get you through a period of time. We want to get to the root cause and make a difference in the lives of children. So we encourage you, we would like to share some information that we've put together. So if you are interested in receiving some information, what we'd like you to do is to give us either an email, or feel free to even give us a call. Our email address is BeTheFirstStep2016 at gmail.com. Again, that's BeTheFirstStep at 2016 at gmail.com. One more time, because I stumbled. BeTheFirstStep 2016 at gmail.com. That's our email. And then my phone number is 678-787-3744. Donna?
And my phone number is 678-938-6032.
And we'll go and post a link to the webinar over on our Facebook page, which is Be the First Step. And you can also contact us through our Facebook page as well. So thank you so much for being with us this evening. If you do have any questions, you're welcome to put them up over on the side, and we'd be happy to address them with you, even though we're getting ready to wrap it up. Just to kind of give you an idea of what Donna and I are getting prepared to do, is we will be putting together weekly webinars, and we will be diving a little bit deeper each week into what the background of this information is all about, which is also then going to be leading up to a summit where we are going to do 10 hours of training in order to help parents, teachers, providers, therapists really get the background information that you want to understand about the world of developmental delay. We have way too many children who are having this pop up in their lives, and I really don't want to make it sound like it's just by chance, because I can tell you some things that I've actually found to be very commonly in those histories that I was talking about earlier. One of the things is where a mom has had a lot of stress and has not had a lot of support through her pregnancy. There's a physiological event, and one of the upcoming webinars will focus on that. Another very common is an artificial fertilization, where a mom cannot get pregnant for herself, rather it be the male or the female. And when we start putting in synthetic-driven hormones, we change the endocrine system of the developing baby, and there are huge issues surrounding that, and we'll be diving into that webinar as well. And then there are the things where mom, she's got allergies, and allergies are then passed on to the baby. A yeast infection is passed on to the baby and causing these disruptions. So there's many pinpoint things that we're going to cover in the upcoming webinars. So please watch out for that schedule. What might you focus on in a webinar?
Well, some of the things that I will talk about is the progression of a developmental delay, because as we talked about, and we agree, teachers are at the front line. So it would be so helpful for teachers to know what they're looking at, and then to have strategies so that they can manage their classrooms in a more effective way.
Absolutely.
If they can identify what's happening with one particular child, that affects the entire classroom.
Sure.
And teachers make lesson plans and have to do research. Well, that child's specific needs, if they're incorporated into those things, it can flow more comfortably for everyone in the
Sure.
class. And the teacher would be doing a wonderful thing for that child, because that child would be able to learn kind of on his or her own terms,
Sure.
but while being incorporated into the group as well. So that's one of the things that I would like to talk about.
So we're really excited to Be the First Step to our community. And we thank you for joining us this evening, and we look forward to seeing you again. Remember, be the first step, because children really can't wait.
Thanks for joining us.